Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Needed Art History, where I am sitting telling you some art history stories. At this point I don't need anymore. I sort of don't remember even when I need it in the video. But welcome to another video about traditional Ukrainian jewelry, just overall. I have a video about traditional Ukrainian beaded jewelry, beads specifically, beaded, my god, jewelry specifically. But today we're going to be talking about just overall. We will start with Kievan Rus. We will not go deeper into history, but we'll start with Kievan Rus and up to the modern time. This video actually I decided to divide it on two parts because there will be a very long video and I just need some time to prepare actually the second part about modern time. So today we're gonna get to from Kievan Rus up to 18th, 19th century. 18th century. The next part will start with 19th century. I will search something out. I don't think that there are stuff in English that I can recommend you, so you will be able to read it yourself. I will look into that. Maybe I will find some kind of books that are online, just for you to look more into some examples, even though you will not be able to read this, but just to look into the pictures. So without further ado, let's dive into our topic today. It isn't me popping up here just to say a little remark. So I did not find any I did not find a lot of examples for today's video in terms of pictures, so there will be just few pictures unfortunately in this video, and all of them are, almost all of them, like 90% of them are from Kievan Rus time. All of the pictures are as usually signed, so you can pause, read what is this material, when it was made. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any picture actually from 14th to 18th century, like examples of this type of jewelry. There will be just a few from 18th century, because I found some kind of pictures, like photos, but I am not sure that those are credible photos. So yeah, very sad. I'm very sad about this. But this is the thing. I'm talking about this, I think, every single time when I'm doing some videos about Ukrainian art, about the problem with digitalization of the collections of our museums. Well, I will give them credits. They're starting to do this now bit by bit. They finally, some of them have fundings for that from different, I don't know, independent companies and everything. But this is this problem. There's no digital collections. So no examples online that are accessible. So yeah, unfortunately, this video I will be just talking, and there will be not a lot of visuals. Very sorry about that. Also with some recommendations, book recommendations, same, nothing. I will not be able to link down literally anything, because there's just some text but there's no pictures. So, and I don't think that it will be valuable to a lot of you because you don't know Ukrainian and you cannot read them. So yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of written information but barely any pictures. And even in the books, I looked into, I have some books about traditional Ukrainian jewelry, or history of Ukrainian jewelry and everything, and there's barely anything there. However, for the next video about 19th century, we will start with 19th century. There will be a lot of examples because there we have a lot of things that are preserved and actually in access also to, we can buy those things. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to say. Sorry about that. Enjoy. We will start with Kievan Rus, and also it all will be very briefly, so I will not get into a lot of details because all of these topics are, they are kind of studied, as we can say. But it's still, there's still not a lot of people here in Ukraine, not a lot of historians, archaeologists, art historians, so there's not a lot of us. So all of the topics, there's still a lot that we can find out about, that we can study in all of these topics. But we will talk just overall. We get briefly, I will just show you some of the examples so you'll understand what was going on in this period of time. So during Rus period, there were all type of jewelry, such thing as neck jewelry. The most popular one were, we call them hrivnya, so I don't believe there's translation, though this is basically a neck piece which it will be like this hryvnia. Some headpieces also, bracelets, temple rings, necklaces, diadems, etc. Everything that you can imagine, we had this in Kievan Rus also. So these complex pieces, they were made by soldering a large number of small parts, and they were also widely decorated using different techniques such as granulation, filigree, niello, cloisonné enamel, as well as pearls and precious stones were used. So some triangles, some crescents, some trefoils, some radial rays, like animal or bird figures, etc. All of this dominated the ornamental motifs in our jewelry. The craftsmen who worked at the court of a knyaz, so knyaz, as I mentioned in some other videos in my channel that are dedicated to Ukrainian art specifically, that here in a period of Rus and just overall, I believe actually it's in Eastern Europe thing, we don't have in a lot of countries here we don't have such a name as king. We call them knyaz. So knyaz is a king, basically, for better understanding. So those craftsmen who worked at the court of knyaz and made expensive jewelry for him and for knyaz and for his family, they also made simpler and lower quality versions for just ordinary women in the city. They were just basically doing some kind of imitations, cheaper imitations from lead or tin that were created in this in the molds. So one of the most common women's jewelry included temple rings, which differed in shapes and kind of we can say it was kind of characteristic of certain Slavic tribes, because there were a lot of different tribes in our territories. And it is also kind of an influence of some kind of Eastern tradition. We had also just different tribes that were common from Eastern steppes and Eastern countries, from different cultural families, as we can say. So what I mean, just Scythians, or years later, Pechenigi, for example, also some Turk tribes, and etc. etc. So this jewelry, so this temple rings and temple ornaments, they were very common in Kievan Rus also. Along with temple jewelry, earrings occupied a prominent place, which could also be attached to the hair. And on the head, girls very often wore such thing, we call it chilce. So it is basically like a forehead jewelry, like this little crown, as we can say. So the lower edge of this jewelry was decorated with small pendants that fell like little tassels on the forehead. On the chest, they wore again those either hryvnias, some chains, some necklaces made of stones, some glass, and also metal pendants in the form of a new moon. It's called lunitsa in Ukrainian, crosses, some bells, zoomorphic figures, etc. Necklaces made of carnelian, of rock, crystal, amber, and also of glass, they were especially popular among wealthy women, and such necklaces could be either imported from abroad, or they could be locally produced. Another thing that was very, very popular, starting from Kievan Rus and till modern time, it's actually amber. And in Kyiv we also had some of the amber workshops. There were 4 found of them in Kyiv, which were probably made products for mass distribution, so both for the city and also for the villages. And there were actually found some house or some workshop here also in Kyiv for one of the Kyiv merchants, and archaeologists there collected almost 8 kilograms of amber there, specifically the Dnieper amber, which was used again for the necklaces, for earrings, for some crosses, for some rings probably, and etc. And during this period of time, also interestingly, the necklaces of ancient ancient Rus women could consist of different materials. That is, in one row there could be some, again, amber, some carnelian, some crystal, some glass. All of this could have been combined and also created into some interesting and beautiful composition. Glass in ancient Rus began to be made in 11th century, and by the 12th century, homemade necklaces with these glass beads had already taken first place in a set of glass jewelry for women. Glass beads could be very diverse in both shape and also color, and we're finding them quite a bit in different places also, not just in city archaeology. The most popular, as I believe, were actually glass beads of blue and green color. The green one actually was, a lot of the green ones are imported, if I remember correctly. I was talking about this in my video of traditional Ukrainian beaded jewelry. I mean, like seed beads. And yeah, I remember I was talking about glass thing a little bit there. So if you're interested, you can watch that. The image of all of this, necklaces and everything was completed by bracelets and rings, obviously. Bracelets could have been also different shapes and forms, so they were twisted, they were cast, they were coiled, like blade shaped, and etc. And it is believed that they were exclusively worn by women. Usually on one hand just, but they might have wear them, it was not just like one bracelet, it was few, at least one up to like 8. So by the reconstruction that we have, some from different materials, like different paintings, this, not paintings, but it's miniatures, illuminations, up to some archaeological findings, so we can say that it was like from 1 to 8, something like this. Sometimes it was like, a very big amount of them on hand. Rural women also wore bracelets, but they were just, they were just of this simpler shape, so they were just either twisted or braided. Glass bracelets, though, they were exclusively worn by city women. In Kiev, purple and turquoise bracelets were especially popular. Rings also were there, so they were worn by rings, though, they were worn by both women and men, even children sometimes, although this is still more of a female decorations, we can say. The number of rings could also vary from 1 to several, but this time also on both hands, and rural craftsmen made mainly copper, less often silver rings, with also just some simple geometric ornaments. So all of this above mentioned is not, not everything that we have from Kievan Rus. This topic is quite big, but we will stop here because again we can go for quite a while with this topic, and we will move on to 14th century. 13th century on Kievan Rus was quite hard because of Mongolian invasion and just overall some destruction going on. This is. That is the problem for Ukraine, because we are situated at such geographically we are situated, like literally like this corridor in between the eastern part of Eurasia and western part of Eurasia. Everyone, if someone wanted to get to Europe, they needed to get through our territory, and thus we're constantly having some kind of battles here, we're constantly having some kind of destructions and everything. That's why a lot of things is not preserved, a lot of things is not known. Then when Moscovia finally, aid us also, and then became Russian Empire, then Soviet Union, and they were stealing a lot. Well, that's exactly what they're still doing. All of our museums in the East, what we know, obviously, that's just what we know. The amount of things that they stole there, and we probably will never see those things again, even if we will return our territories, and even if everything will be regulated somehow, we still don't have a lot of things that they stole. They actually, not the Germans stole a lot of things from us during the Second World War. It was actually Soviet Union, Moscow, basically. They stole the Hermitage have so many things now from our Ukrainian museums that we will never ever see those things again. But well, let's move on. We will skip the 13th century, 1200s, very hard years. I mean, starting from 13th century, every other century was a very hard century for Ukraine. But in the 14th, 15th century, the development of master jewelers continued in many cities of modern Ukraine, territory of modern Ukraine, such as Kyiv, Lviv, Halych, Belz, Lutsk, and etc. The main metals for making jewelry at this time were gold and silver. Multicolored precious stones also were added to these metals at this point, so sapphire, some emeralds, corundum, and etc. Those were especially valued in the 15th and 16th century. They were valued primarily of their color, so the stones themselves, they did not necessarily have to be of some perfect shape. They were added to a metal product in its natural state, in its natural shape and form. The approach to stones changed though in the 17th century then, when they were less often perceived as just this, simply colored spots on shiny metal basically. And from this period also a lot of Greek masters, they appeared in certain cities, Lviv mostly of Ukraine, bringing with them their traditions and also bringing some Eastern traditions. Therefore now in jewelry there appears a typical Eastern juxtaposition of some emeralds and rubies placed in the form of rosettes, for example, or like other ornamental forms. So products of this period, they are as well pretty complex, and they have this complex ornamental form with decor in the filigree and animal techniques with, however, this time already orientation towards some Western European art. We have especially quite a bit of information about the production of women's jewelry in the 16th, 17th century from Lviv, where craftsmen from all over Europe worked at certain periods of time. So there were Germans, even Scots, I didn't know that some Scottish people were there, but Scots were there, Dutch people, Poles, Hungarian, as well as Armenians and Jewish craftsmen. Armenians especially, so there's a very big diaspora of Armenians still. There in Lviv, there's literally streets that are called like Armenian Street or something like that. So they are a very big part of the city's history. To master the skill of making women's jewelry, an apprentice had to work for many years, and upon completion of his studies, he had to present 2 products. One of which was mandatory. It was a ring. The other one, as I understand, he could have chose himself what he wanted, but the one should have been ring. And not just a ring, but also a ring with a colored stone. That was important. I don't know why, but it was important. The variation of jewelry for urban women in this period of time was also numerous. So there were the same thing as diadems, some like metal filigree necklaces, some massive chains, hair pins that are called agrafs. So they were used to pin feathers to headdresses, and I believe it will be agrafs the same because, well, it's a French word. It's not a Ukrainian one, so I don't think at least I didn't find a accurate English translation, but again, it's a French word, so I think it might be the same in English also. Some also pendants, some bracelets, some rings, some brooches, like everything. Often also half of these pieces, they were made half of these products, they were made from different pieces, which were then combined into one product. And such details were decorated with various stones and were actually so well made that each such individual detail could easily be perceived as some kind of like self-sufficient decoration. The decorations were made taking into account also the cut of women's clothing of the time, and this is a very common thing for jewelers. I remember talking about this in also video about Lalique, when women he was doing such an amazing pieces, such an extraordinary pieces that women were so fond of and they wanted to wear them so much. But back in time the fashion was that, well, women were wearing something like that, so the neckline was very high. I don't know if you can even call this a neckline if it's like this in English. So they started actually to terrorize basically fashion houses to tell that like we want to wear Lalique jewelry, so you need to make a lower neckline so we can wear them and so everyone could see them and everyone could admire them also. So it's a completely normal and very interesting stuff. So it was like this back in time also. The obligatory component of the noble women's jewelry complex were long strings of pearls, which were strung in 3 or 5, even sometimes rows, as well also as some crosses, some brooches, and some pendants. The production of cheap jewelry was carried out by craftsmen who were not actually accepted into the workshops for, one reason or another. Usually it was because of a different nationality or face. So when our Eastern I'm sorry, eastern, what is western territories, like Lviv, right, was under the Polish occupation. Poles were actually oppressing Ukrainian craftsmen in Lviv, and they were not taking them either to work. Then, during the Khmelnytsky uprising, so this is a period, very important period of time for Ukraine. It started in 1648. Well, in Ukraine we call it Національна визвольна війна. And yeah, Russians and Polish people are using this for, like, as usually, to discredit us, because how dare Ukrainians fight for their freedom? How dare they, Ukrainians ask for leaving us the fuck alone in our own country? And a lot of you out there in the West are eating this shit up, because, when Russians are fighting for their freedom, it's acceptable. Polish people fighting for their freedom, it's acceptable and independence. Palestinians fighting for their again, independence in their own land, it's acceptable. Syrians, it's acceptable. Everyone is acceptable. But when you start to talk about Ukraine, like, I don't know, your brain's just shutting off or something. I don't know, you're having some fucking strokes or whatever. And so yeah, but that was a very important part of our history, and still is. It all started from not a very good, not a very high goal, I don't know how to call it correctly, but just because the estate of Khmelnytsky was destroyed by some Polish nobleman, Chaplinsky. And so Khmelnytsky was like, what the fuck, basically. He stole also his wife and killed his son, I believe. Something that was pretty gruesome, actually, but yeah, Khmelnytsky came back and was like, what the fuck are you doing, actually? Sorry for my language. And that's how everything started, but poor people were like, you know what, hell yeah, fuck all of this. And so Khmelnytsky was just like, well, there is no turning point back. Let's at this point, let's do some kind of a revolution, like, basically, in modern words. So it's a pretty interesting story, but it ended up not very greatly for us, and, well, it's an interesting period of time. Also, these Cossacks and everything, they are demonized, obviously, by Russians, by Polish people, because, again, how dare people that are being occupied, they are being terrorized by them, right? How dare they fight back? It's not acceptable. As long as they are Ukrainians, it's not acceptable. But, okay, I can talk about this for very long now. I can rant angrily for a very long time, but 1648, this is when this period of this is the Khmelnytsky uprising started. It was going for a few years, and, well, during this, so it's basically first half of 17th century, middle of 17th century, this event contributed to the development of folk and professional artistic creativity. Thus, the foundations of a new style were laid, which we call actually Ukrainian Baroque. And it is a very interesting thing. I will not get into details here. I actually think that it would be appropriate to do a whole video on its own on Ukrainian Baroque, because it's a pretty unique thing in Baroque movement, in Baroque style, in this Baroque period in art. And even Western European art historians, they are agreeing that this is a very unique thing. I think that I will do a video about this a bit later when I have time. Ukrainian Baroque mostly is shown in architecture, in a bit in paintings also, but architecture is like the pearl of this style. And there were also obviously some influence on jewelry with all of that, but at the end of this century, so 17th century, goldsmithing in Lviv, it started to decline, and it declined a bit, while goldsmithing in left bank Ukraine and Kiev specifically started to be developed even more, actually. So the craftsmen here used almost all of the technique known at that time. Again, forging, casting, soldering, carving, etc., etc. And they also decorated the products with such techniques as repoussé, some gilding, some filigree, some porcelain enamel, some yellow enamel, etching, and etc., etc. And among the women's assortments were such jewelry as some chains, some corsets, earrings, rings, necklaces, some necklaces made of coins, and so on, and also such an important and interesting thing that is called dukach. Unfortunately, not many examples of jewelry from this time are currently preserved in museums. Just overall, not a lot of pieces is preserved from this period of time, because again, this is a time of fighting and destructions because of this uprising, and so we don't have a lot of things. We have just some pieces preserved actually of clothes, but they are extremely rare to find, because again, all of this was burned at some point, destroyed, because it belonged to Cossacks or to Khmelnytsky himself, and etc. So we don't have a lot of things that belong actually to our hetmans. No jewelry, no, all of this were probably stolen. Very popular and often obligatory women's jewelry were such thing, as I said, that we call dukac. So it was made, dukac is it's basically made from like coin or some metal of it's either some Western European or Russian production or like reproduction of them. Some of these medallions could also have depicted scenes from local like Orthodox iconography. So this to hang this dukac, so this little medal basically, 1 or 3 this little loops were made. I don't know, like eyes. I found this translation that it's still called eyes in English for jewelry. I have no idea is it correct or not, but basically those little loops were made. And so, as I said, it was like either 1 or 3 of them. So if it was one just loop like that, then this dukac was worn on a chain or on a ribbon, or in the middle of a necklace. Most of the time, but now it's still a very popular thing in Ukraine. So dukac, it's still, I really want to actually, I can find anywhere the one that I like, that I would, the one that I would want to wear, even though I'm not really wearing necklaces, because I think a lot of women will understand me. I feel like I am suffocating, and it does not matter what type of necklace, either, you know, literally just on your neck, or it's something that is going down. I still feel it on my neck, you know, and I literally, it's like, it feels like someone is trying to choke me. So unfortunately, I'm not wearing them, but still, for my little collection, I really would like to have, like, you know, at least one dukac, because it's pretty old tradition for, like, in our Ukrainian jewelry, not just Ukrainian, like, because I don't actually know whether some other, like, balls, I think they also have things like that. Well, probably they have things like this, because again, this exchange, because, you know, we were occupied by them and by this and this, that's, you know, some stuff that were circulating among the nations, and they were incorporating in one another's nations. So most probably they have something like this also, I don't know, but I really would like to have this one. So getting back, what I was to say, that modern girls also, they are wearing now on ribbons, just this red ribbon specifically. I will show you an example, obviously. But if it was made with these 3 loops, so then it was attached to a chain with little chains. And well, dukac, it was the central piece adornment of both noble women and, well, less well-off women. As for the earrings, so during this period, they were quite simple, clear, and, well, basically logical, as we can say, in their structure. So married women wore earrings without stones, or just with, you know, some one little stones, while girls, they were a more colorful products with multicolored stones most of the time. And the daughters actually of the Cossack foremen, they were wearing some earrings with long pendants and some large stones, like for celebrations, for example. Rings also continue to be a universal decoration still in this period of time. And so we have this few concepts. So it was not just, there's like a few different names for the rings. First is, well, ring, it was just traditional ring. And then we have such a thing as napalok, and also zhukovina, or zhukovina most probably, I don't know, I'm sorry with this stresses, I have problems with stresses. So rings were made not only of gold and silver, but also of tin, iron, and copper, just overall rings, right? What is napalok? Napalok was made in the form of this massive ring and worn on your index finger. Zhukovina had this round, some like square or rectangular shield, like shield here, right, on the upper part, and it had some carved decor, but often they had actually, you know, the personal seal or coat of arms. The surface of the rings was often carved or covered with some colored animals. We also know from 17th century documents that wedding rings appeared as an attribute of the wedding ceremony. Rings and wedding rings were an integral component of the ensemble of jewelry in the attire of all social strata of the Ukrainian people. Among the widely used ornaments was a red collar necklace. It's still very popular, still a lot of, I want one of them also. They're quite expensive still, but I believe not so expensive as back then, but still it's not a cheap desire. And again, I really want, you know, to have it in my collection, but unfortunately we don't have such in old examples of like 17th century or 18th century, but we have some of the preserved things from 19th century that, well, you can buy. And so, you know, I'm on like people's tradition, the coral was also called a kind, and this like coral necklace, it was called a kind and sincere necklace. Coral necklaces became very big part of our attire, and it was also considered medicinal. In one of the herbal books of the 16th century, we can also find such thing that no spells are cast on a person who wears a coral necklace. There was a belief that when a woman is healthy, the corals on her are actually red and very bright and vivid. But when she gets sick, this coral they can turn white and the color can fade basically. And the corals was imported mostly from Venice to Ukraine in this time. Pearl necklaces were also the most popular. Small and medium-sized pearls were collected in many local rivers. Large, clean pearls from the Persian Gulf were the most valued, though. They were imported to Ukraine through Kaffa, which is now called Feodosia. It's Crimea. It's occupied. Little reminder. By Russians. So small pearls were sold by weight, large ones by like one piece. And so these pearls necklaces, they usually also consisted of 5 or 10 or even sometimes more strings, and they were used as well for earrings and bracelets. They were also like mostly at this period of time worn by the wives of Cossack foremen. But in general, as portraits of that time show, women of even the poorest strata of the population had pearl necklaces. They tried to have at least, you know, like even just like one string of these pearls. In addition to aesthetic features, pearls were seen as having, you know, this healing and symbolic properties to them. White pearls were associated with purity and fidelity, and in women's clothing they could be associated with a symbol of like female fate, you know, of suffering and also atonement for sins. I'm very skeptical with such meanings, to be honest, but well, let it be. A pretty also characteristic feature of the necklace, well, made of coral, of pearls, etc., was that crosses decorated with stones and gold coins were attached to them. Amber necklaces also continue to be very important. So I actually remembered I have my little jewelry box where I'm keeping, like my grandpa, he's doing a lot of different jewelries, some necklaces and also some earrings. This is not his earrings. But in some of the videos I'm wearing quite often his earrings. This is the only thing that I'm wearing. But he is doing also some kind of jewelries, and I will show you some examples. I remember that I have actually such an amber one. So this is like this natural unpolished, well, ambers. Yeah, this one he made himself. So amber is also still very popular. And you can buy them. I also want to buy actually myself, this is good and great, but it is very massive, and I don't know, you need to kind of think about that to style it. And again, I'm not really wearing that, you see. Oh, it actually goes very well with this blouse. Okay, yeah, so it's very interesting. Yeah, but I want some, like, so you can say classical, this amber necklaces, which are again pretty popular in Ukraine still. You can find some examples of like 19th century, not older, but yeah. And with like my grandpa, he's very inspired by Kievan Rus and those ancient Rus jewelry, so he was doing, so this is like one of the examples also. So all of these are modern beads, right, but these things he is making it themselves, those metal stuff. So I don't know, it reminds me a lot about Kievan Rus and necklaces, so something. It looks actually very good with this blouse also. Yeah. Also I have some other stuff like these. What is that? Where is it? Yeah. I really oh, so actually corals. So my grandpa, he tried to make some kind of, oh, this is also the thing. So he's doing this stuff. This is some Soviet coin, old Soviet coin from 1921. He just put our Ukrainian coin, modern coin, to replace the Soviet coat of arm. Yeah, no, what is this called in modern words? But he had like these few pieces of corals, natural coral. This one. This is our modern beads, just some plastic, whatever. And this is the pieces of coral. So it was also this what is this called? Red. This red coral is also very popular. I think I have a bit more. To put it. Oh yes. Oh my god. Yeah. Yeah. So also you see these coins again. Those are some coins from, I don't know, 1 mark. This is 1 mark. Duchess Reign, 1914. I don't know where he found those coins. And this is Dutch, this is Soviet from 1909, again Soviet from 1929, 1915, what else we have here, yeah, 1929 again, and this is also pieces of corals with, yes, you see this one. So this is basically also it is inspired by the Ukrainian traditional stuff. I'm very hesitant to wear these things, to be honest, because of this Soviet stuff. Even though those Dukach that I talked about, it is a popular thing still, and well, they are made from like this like big coins like this, for example, but from like Austrian Empire time. So it's kind of like alright. And this is just also considering that my grandpa is doing these things. He's just, I don't know, putting our Ukrainian coins on this Soviet one. It's kind of symbolic also. I like it actually. Yeah, so oh, and I also have one he made me, or I bought it, I don't remember. No, I think it was him who made me this pearl necklaces. So also I thought that those are real pearls, but that's the thing. This is also kind of the thing that it was kind of popular well, in a period of time that we are talking about. So this is just this thing that my grandpa is doing, stuff like that. Something like this. Again, with all of these coins, and so, however, this one is, yeah, interesting stuff that he's doing. And, well, getting distracted, just a bit of, or I can actually, no, I can't. I already starts to feel like I'm being suffocated. So I'm sorry, but I will get this out. Getting back to amber, different shapes again, forms, colors, as you can see. So this is not a very, so this is this type of amber that is not see-through, not transparent. So yeah, so there's a lot of them. A lot of different types. We have amber locally. There's a lot of them on in Volyn region. We have also a bit of this in Middle Dnieper River region, so it's like central Ukraine basically, and also Ciscarpathia, it's called like this in English. Well, it's called Prikarpatia. So it's like near, so it's this region near Carpathian Mountains. So the beads from this were from amber was cut in terms of like, you know, carved, like not cut like vegetables, with a sharp knife, giving them a round or faceted shape of a fairly large diameter. And also remember one thing, that the larger ones were strung in, just overall beads, were strung in the middle. the smaller ones along the edges, forming this long stream that reached below the middle of the chest most of the time. So this is a common recipe that was started back in time, and it was still continuing with like it still is like this, you know, the necklaces are still made like this. Those who are trying to continue like our traditions of more like traditional Ukrainian jewelries, if it makes sense. So iconographic and written sources shows us that in the 17th and 18th century, well-civil Ukrainian women and girls, some noble women, some daughters and wives of Cossack officers, like officers basically for better understanding, used more necklaces made of pearls, garnet, coral, some gold coins, chains, this dukachi, some crosses, all of this with precious stones in their outfits. And these decorations, thanks to, you know, their different abilities, not abilities, I don't know, so, you know, the shine of gold, you know, the sparkling play of these colored stones, also some this iridescence of pearls, all of this were best combined with their clothes, which well, back in time it was very richly decorated clothes from, you know, those, they were sewn from very expensive fabrics such as velvet, such as satin, yeah, not Satan, satin, some damasks and etc. Almost always those fabric depicted some large flowers. It was trimmed with gold cords, with gold threads. In winter they were wearing you know, a lot of sable fur and some other valuable furs, and so all of this were obviously and so the jewelries were some addition to the clothes, and they needed to be on the same level as as the clothes. But I don't have, unfortunately, a lot of examples of these clothes as I mentioned previously. There's just some scratches, you know, some little pieces like this that were found during some excavations, or I don't know, somehow survived in the museums or whatever. And yeah, unfortunately, the only thing that we can, how we know all of this, it's first of all written resources and quite a bit of paintings of portraits of Cossacks, of this nobility. Not much is preserved. A part of this, women's jewelry of the 16th and 18th century, to, you know, in addition to its decorative meaning, had a number of other meanings, among which, well, the most important one is the capital and social prestige meaning. Even the poorest segments, you know, poorest strata of the population, they tried to provide their daughters with such such necklaces that we talked about. Foreign traveler, for example, von Gun in 1805, he was struck by the poverty of Ukrainian villages near city Yahutin. But at the same time, he noted that the neck jewelry of peasant women often costed more than the entire house. And so, I mean, this is a traditional meaning for the jewelry overall throughout Europe. And I think we can talk about this like overall in the whole world, that jewelry and fabrics and your clothes, that was the only thing that in almost every part of the world women were able to own, and men were not stripping them away from that. In most of the, like in Europe, for example, if we will talk, in most of the countries, that was actually a law that men cannot take away the jewelries, and again, fabric or clothes. So even if he would like to do something like this, by the law, he was not allowed. Even though, again, we know that law, it's not something that will stop a man to do something to a woman, but still, and this is still a thing, right, that men are always laughing about, oh, you women are gold diggers, so you like the jewelry and everything. Of course we like jewelry, because now it is literally engraved. It's some kind of, I don't know, like already historical setting that on the, just on this, you know, level, intuitive level at this point, you are clinging to something like, you know, like this, even though now we don't have, like a lot of us, we don't have access to a very expensive thing, because I don't believe that, you know, this thing that I can sell it for tons of money and live happy after that. But still, you know, it can cost me some money. And we can see it still in the cases of domestic violence, that first thing first, what women are doing is they are selling their earrings, their rings, you know, to kind of try and survive, because this is everything that they have. So we can say that this tradition did not die down still at this point. But okay, it's another topic that I can be that I can talk about quite a bit and in very heated tones. We had the same thing. It was a valuable stuff. It was important because it's the only thing that a woman could have owned. The other also value of women's jewelry as material values, it can be traced in the ancient custom of donating necklaces of this coral, made of corals, made of pearls, of like gold coins, dukachi, and etc. to churches, actually as pendants for icons. So this is an interesting thing. I didn't know this prior to me preparing this material, so I was not aware that it's a costume on our lands. So in the 16th, 18th centuries, in addition to the above-mentioned jewelry, forehead and hair jewelry were also mandatory, a tradition that dates back to ancient times, as we said prior. So the daughters of wealthier people that decorated their hair with velvet ribbons embroidered with some gold or silver threads, also some multicolored silk and etc. In the 17th century, special looms appeared for the widths of the ribbon. Before that, they were woven like piece of fabric or buying piece of fabric, whatever, and then they were cutting it. However, village girls, they were not able to afford such things, and village girls, they wove lush wreaths of fresh flowers and leaves, and in winter, they were actually making some artificial flowers from paper, some fabric, some wax, and etc. And this tradition actually continued in the next centuries. But about that we will talk in our next video.